Okay, great. Well, let's make a start whilst we're here. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar on Women in Tech, the Journey to Leadership, brought to you by the one and only Trilogy International. I'm really excited to be hosting today's webinar alongside my colleague Grace. Before we get started, we'll just go through a little bit of housekeeping. As you can probably see, your camera and microphones are switched off. If you would like to ask any questions, feel free to use the Q&A box on the left-hand side. We'll be dedicating 15 minutes at the end of the webinar to answer all of your questions. We'll also be recording this webinar, so if any of your friends or colleagues have missed it, we'll send you an email with a link to the webinar so you can watch afterwards. We'll also be sending you a link to a short feedback survey. This is our second webinar on diversity, so we would love your feedback on how it went and any ideas for topics for the next webinar. I'll now hand over to James Potto, who is our AVP in the US, who's going to briefly talk about who we are and as a company.
Thanks, Helen. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Potto. I lead Trilogy here in the US. For those of you that don't know us, Trilogy's purpose and passion is scaling diverse engineering teams and leadership functions with seed to C funded startups, as well as enterprise firms going through digital transformations. For the many of you here that do know us, you'll know this is the second in our diversity and inclusion webinar series, and I'm excited to announce that our third will occur in February, and we're also going to have an in-person meeting to go along with our online event, which is very exciting. So please do look out for that in the coming weeks. I also wanted to acknowledge Helen. Helen is a wonderful example of an emerging thought leader in the engineering community. And as a recruiter, she has an incredible ability to take conversations and discussions at events like this and translate them into solutions and things that can actually be implemented around career growth, hiring, and scaling engineering functions. I also know that Helen and all the other leaders at Trilogy have made themselves widely available up until Thanksgiving to have any one-on-one conversations around your own career growth, your own hiring plans, and your own thoughts and feelings on how we scale diverse functions. Without further ado, I'll pass you over to Grace. Grace leads our marketing efforts globally here at Trilogy, and I hope everyone has a lovely, lovely afternoon. Over to you, Grace.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on Journey to Leadership for Women in Tech. Today, we're going to spend about 10 to 15 minutes discussing each of the following topics: encouraging female promotion, overcoming obstacles as a woman, how can we champion more women, and obviously we'll end with a 10-minute live Q&A at the end. So we'll be hearing from Tacita, Melissa, and Alex about their journeys to leadership. We want this webinar to leave you feeling inspired, motivated, and empowered to go for your next role on your own journey to leadership.
Amazing. Thank you, Grace. So introducing our panelists today, we have Melissa Benua, Senior Director of Engineering at mParticle. mParticle has been one of Trilogy's clients for about 2 years now, and we've helped her to build out her software and product teams. Next up, we have Alex Robinson, Engineering Manager at Resilia. Resilia is also one of Trilogy's clients, and we were able to support Alex in finding her role at Resilia. And finally, we have Tacita Morway, Chief Technology Officer at Textio. We've been connected with Tacita for a couple of years now from a candidate perspective. I'll now hand over to our panelists to briefly introduce themselves and tell us what leadership means to them in a sentence. I'll start with you, Melissa. Melissa, you're muted, sorry.
Thank you. So I'm Melissa Benua. I'm the Senior Director of Platform Engineering at mParticle. I've been here for about 6 years now in various roles, and I currently lead the platform group to provide really amazing shared stable services across all of engineering. So what leadership means to me and what I strive to do in my group is to empower everybody to be the best versions of themselves, both individually and together as a team in order to have the broadest, coolest, best impact.
Amazing. Thank you, Melissa. Alex?
Hey everyone, I'm Alex Robinson. I am currently an engineering manager at Resilia. Resilia is a company that builds software to help nonprofits reach their goals. And I am currently leading a team that is focused on helping our users get onboarded onto our platform and quickly find value in our platform. As Helen and Grace mentioned, I recently joined Resilia. And before that, I was the director of backend engineering at the Turing School of Software and Design. I think when I think about leadership, I really think about helping to, number one, establish a vision beyond what is, helping to align folks around that vision, and then helping to enable people to find their unique way to contribute to the vision. So yeah, I would say that's in essence what I think about leadership. I think there's so many facets to leadership, and it takes on different forms. I think depending on who you are, depending on what you're working on, and who you're surrounded by as well.
Amazing, thanks, Alex. And finally, Tacita.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tacita. I primarily use she, her pronouns, and I am the CTO for Textio. Textio is, we offer language guidance that disrupts bias as you're writing in your recruitment materials, your job posts, your LinkedIn posts, job descriptions. And we've also now expanded into performance management and the feedback that people receive. So which is very exciting. We can talk more about that later. So I lead the R&D team there, which is engineering, product design, security, IT, all of the things in R&D. So for me, leadership, like Alex was saying, takes on so many different forms, and it comes from so many different roles and people. And the end result, the impact of leadership, wherever it's coming from or whatever it looks like, is that organizations or teams or individuals have clarity about what they're trying to accomplish, and that they are set up to be able to accomplish that. They're enabled, equipped, and invited, actually asked and allowed to do the work that they're aiming to do. And hopefully with healthy leadership, maximize their chances of success and actually enjoying the process along the way and learning and growing.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we're going to start our first topic with a poll. So encouraging, one sec. Just give me a second. Okay, this is not working quite as we planned. So if you could just pop your answers in the chat. So how likely are you to apply for a role you don't meet the criteria for? Is it very likely, likely, not likely, or very unlikely? Okay, so we've got quite a few likelies, quite a few unlikelies. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so we're getting a mixture of answers there from everybody. Great, so on to our first topic, all about encouraging female promotion in tech. We've got a couple of statistics here for you. So women apply for 20% fewer jobs than men, despite similar job search behaviours. And men apply for a job when they meet only 60% of the qualifications, but women apply only if they meet 100% of them. Tacita, what are your thoughts on this?
I think oftentimes we're not getting the job description right. We are describing this kind of impossible checklist that becomes a filtering mechanism. And that checklist is like our blueprint, like someone's decided this is, you need to have done and seen these things to be able to be successful in this role. Instead of talking about, here's the problems you're going to be solving, here's the impact you'd be expected to have. And I think it's easy to see yourself in your different skills, how they might apply in different scenarios, if you're looking at the problem set more. And so there's times where, you might, job description might say you need X many of years with this kind of title, and you might have had other roles, different titles that giving you skills and experience that you can apply in that position. But that's a big leap of faith we need to take as the person looking at the interview, at the job description. And so I think our job descriptions are just on the face filtering people out. And of course, there's bias that shows up in the language that we're using, and that we don't even always catch that. So that by itself can sort of, we can use language that feels really clear to people we're familiar with talking to, but that's not going to necessarily apply to the very diverse audience we're trying to reach. And so again, using our own voice, if we don't have someone checking that, we might just be really writing compelling language to a particular group or a particular demographic. And so people will start filtering themselves out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Melissa, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so when I'm thinking about job descriptions, I'm trying to filter through my must-haves, right? These are the core competencies of the job. And I put up two sections, right? Here's the core competencies. Here's the things you're going to be doing. You're going to be designing back-end systems. You're going to be using C# and AWS every day, versus the nice-to-haves, right? It would be nice if you were exposed to these services in AWS. It would be nice if you have done massively scaled distribution. It would be nice if you're familiar with touching data pipes. But by separating out these, this is what you must have because you're going to do this every day. This is the core competencies. And then here's all the bonus sugar. It makes it explicit to people that, of course, you don't have to meet all these things. These are all bonuses, right? They're extra. And so try to keep the things that you must have very small and concise and accurate so that people have an easier time, right? As Tessa said, seeing themselves in the role. That here's the day-to-day thing. And then here's all things that might help you. But if you don't have all of them, we don't expect you to have all of them.
Yeah, really, really good point. We see so many job descriptions as recruiters where there's so many required skills. So we must make sure when we're speaking to the clients, you know, what are the must-haves and what are the nice-to-haves? Alex, do you have anything to add to that point?
Yeah, I'm thinking about this from the opposite perspective of like the person who's applying for the job. And you know, one of the things that I learned early on in my career is really, I think, because of, you know, what Melissa and Tacita mentioned, like not to trust job descriptions very much. And so I make it a point, I think, for any job that I've had, I've actually, you know, talked to someone at the company prior to applying. Or, you know, or it's like working with a recruiter who has some, you know, like more inside knowledge about the actual role. But I think, you know, one of the things, and I think it came from my experience early on in my career of getting promoted into positions where I would go back and read the job description for that position and be like, really? Like, you want me to do this job? Like, based on the job description, it doesn't seem like I meet the criteria. But then in actuality, I have the skill set that they're looking for. And, you know, I'm able to do this job well. And so, you know, that's one of the things that I make a point of, like, I talk to someone who actually understands what the job requires, what that role requires, and then I assess whether or not I'm a good fit for it, or my experience is a good fit for it, or if I have transferable skills that can be applied, even if, you know, I don't necessarily have the exact type of experience that they're asking for. So that's one of the things that I, you know, like, otherwise, I think if I don't talk to people, I would probably be in that group of people like who are unlikely to apply for something based on the job description if I don't meet the match. And so I would say, like, that's one strategy that I really apply to make sure that I'm not, you know, like, kind of limiting myself or, you know, not taking advantage of opportunities that might actually be really good. So.
Makes sense. Okay, so then if the job descriptions are wrong and you're not getting the right applications when you're recruiting internally, what are your company doing to overcome this? Melissa, do you want to go with that one?
So we take an iterative approach on basically everything we do, which includes our hiring practices, right? Just like I would have a retro on a sprint, and I would take the feedback of what wasn't working and use it to improve the next sprint. Do the same thing on our headcounts, right? So we start with a hiring practice. If we're getting traction, great, it seems to be working. If we're missing traction, we're not getting any headcount, we're not getting any applicants to the role, or we're getting applicants, but they're not the right profile. Do a retro on it. What's not working? Is it the job description is unclear? Is it that we're losing them at screening? Is it that our recruiters are unaligned or don't understand what we meant in the job description? And then start iterating, tweaking it slowly, right? If the problem is we're not getting enough applicants, maybe pare down the job description. Maybe the job description doesn't make sense, or you're asking for a unicorn, really you just want a horse. And then again, aligning that with the people who are out there sourcing and talking to candidates. If there's a misalignment there, if they're pitching the role wrong, or they're not emphasizing the right pieces, then of course you're not going to have the right people in pipe. If you're losing them at screen, who's screening? Are they doing a good job? Are they aligned with what everybody expects? Same thing if they're dropping out during interview, right? Are you asking them to do something onerous or difficult or outside of norms for what you're trying to hire for? All of those places, you know, there's many potential problems to a leaky pipe and a lack of filled headcount, but taking an honest look regularly at what you're doing is the first way to address that, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Tasta, do you have anything to add about Textio, what you're doing?
Of course, we start with using Textio. So we'll use our own software to help give us that guidance and that confidence that we're using language that's going to reach the broadest audience possible. And it's really important to have that observability so that you can have those retros that Melissa's talking about, right? Like you're tracking what the pipeline looks like who's coming in, who are you reaching and connecting with, and then where are people falling off along the process and the interview process, and checking yourselves on that. Like, are there patterns showing up here that we don't want to be seeing? Are there certain like demographics or groups that are actually getting through at a different rate than others? So having that observability in place is really helpful for informing what you're going to troubleshoot in the retros. You can also ask for feedback from the candidates. So it's not going to talk, this won't help you know, like talk to who isn't applying, but for those folks who are applying, you can get feedback on like, what about our job description was compelling to you? What wasn't? What like made you nervous? And then taking that feedback in as well. But again, starting with using Textio software, not trying to cheat here, but that really helps us ensure that we're reaching the broadest group that we can.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people on here are obviously here for the journey to leadership that we've mentioned. So we've spoken about, you know, external candidates applying that might not because of the job description. But what about those people in your company that maybe are a senior and want to progress into engineering management, but, you know, don't know whether to apply or not? What kind of advice would you give to those people? Anyone? Alex?
Yeah, I can start here. You know, one of the things that I think is really important is to be having regular conversations with your manager about your career growth, about, you know, what you're interested in, about, you know, like what the future looks like. And that's one of the things that I try to do with every member of my team. We try to make sure that everyone has a way that they're documenting the work that they're doing, and the learnings from that work. And so it's like, not only it's like, I did this thing on this date, you know, I accomplished this thing, but it's like, what did I learn from that? Doing like a little mini retro with yourself to understand, you know, here's the takeaway. Here's what I'm going to think about, you know, moving forward. Here's how I applied this, you know, like in a future task or project, and being able to like have kind of that record. In addition, I think, you know, one of the things that I really like about Resilia, and I think for the stage of startup that we have a pretty mature, I would say, like career ladder. We have a pretty clear defined, you know, like here's a role, here are the requirements, you know, like for this role in this level. And that really helps in the conversation. So you can start by saying, cool, these are, you know, some of the requirements to get to the next level. Let's talk about where you're at today. You know, where are your opportunities for growth? Where are areas where you're already exhibiting some of these behaviors? And then trying to match, you know, kind of the opportunities for growth with the, you know, like any opportunities that might come up for you to really you know, like apply and practice and get that experience. And I think that has to be an ongoing conversation. It shouldn't just be around the time where you're like, oh, I think I want a promotion, or, oh, I think I'm ready. It should be, you know, like, let's talk about this now and let's be intentional and really think about like you know, how we approach, you know, like how you approach your own work, right? And just like keeping what you want to do top of mind, for me, so I can be on the lookout for like, oh, here's a cool project. This would be really great, for this person, because I know they're wanting to grow in this area. And so that's kind of how I approach it. I will say it's like a little bit harder when you don't have a really nice, laid out career ladder, or you don't have, like a good, solid understanding of the requirements for each level. I think that makes it really hard. So I would say that's step 0, just as a team and as an organization. But then I think once you have that established, it makes those ongoing conversations, a lot easier. So.
Yeah, some really, really useful tips there that we can all put into practice. Let's go on to the next topic that we're going to talk about. So overcoming obstacles as a woman. So we've got a poll. In your opinion, what is the most significant barrier to women working in tech? Is it lack of confidence, inequality, family commitments, differences in communication, or other? Any others? If you could just drop them in the chat. That'd be really great. So just give you a few more seconds to complete. Okay, brilliant. Let's end the poll. Okay, so inequality comes out at 48%. That's quite a big landslide there.
Interesting, very interesting. Yes, so moving on to our next statistics for you. So women are leaving the tech industry at a 45% higher rate than men. And companies in the top quartile of gender diversity on their executive teams are 25% more likely to achieve above average profitability. So from our poll, one of the reasons is motherhood, but the main one there was inequality. As the second stat shows here, there's a really good reason to overcome these obstacles. So Melissa, what barriers have you seen in the industry for women advancing their careers, and what is your advice to them for overcoming these barriers?
Oh, I mean, I've encountered all of them, right? From overt discrimination to subtle discrimination to men who believe that they are strong allies, but because they have this strongly held belief that they're strong allies, they're actually your worst obstacle because they're not open to criticism or change. I think the biggest barrier has often been having people believe me when I say who I am, and having them support who I am and the skills that I have. And be open to, I may look different or sound different or come in a different package, but I'm still capable of doing this job. And I'm just as capable as somebody who may look or sound or present or communicate in a different way. And the journey of uniting who I am and who I prefer to be with who I think I need to be in order to be successful, and who, right, my leaders think that I need to be, has been sort of the biggest journey for me, and sort of the biggest set of barriers to overcome. Because in the end, it's, are we all aligned on who I am and what I'm going to do and what I bring to the table, or not? And if we're not, can I fix it, or can I not fix it? Right? Is there a growth mindset where I can cause change, and people who believe in me and who want to do better and want all of us collectively to do better? Or do they already believe that they're the best they can be and it's not fixable? In which case, I need to find somewhere where I can make it work.
Yeah, all makes sense. How about you, Tacita?
That all super rings true. And I think,
Yeah.
I mean, as someone who I went into engineering, and then I left to go be a heavy machinery operator, and then I went to art school and to landscape design, then back into engineering. So I did the thing where I left the industry, and looking back now, I can look back and be like, oh, it's like I was the only other in the room, and that got real tiring. And I didn't recognize or honor at the time how much I was like, I go after what feels good. And so in that moment, at that company where I was the only woman on the team, and I was surrounded by cis hetero white men in suits, and I was like, oh, I don't speak this language. I'm not interested in golf, and I'm not interested in like the things that are being talked about on a regular basis. And so this isn't fun. And so I left. And so for me, it was that the barrier for my sticking to the path I was on was not having community. And I didn't see that anywhere else either. I didn't know that there was companies that might give a different, and this is, back in the 2000s, early 2000s. And so I was just like, no, this whole industry, as far as I can tell, looks like this. So I'm out. Like I'm going to go find someplace else where I can feel more at ease and more comfortable. And now today, especially as companies are becoming more going distributed, we have a lot of options. And so like Melissa was saying, like looking at where you're at and figuring out, is there a growth mindset here? Is there going to be potential for change? Will I be set up for support in this environment? And how much work is going to take for me to get there? And if I'm just going to be like swimming upstream, that's so much energy going into getting support instead of going into being the best in my role. And maybe I should find an organization that is going to have the support built in so I can just focus on the skills I need to be able to get the work done. And it's terrifying and it's exhausting to try and move between companies. And for the moments where I've seen myself be blocked and then shifted, it was like night and day when I found that organization where that support was already there. And the growth that I saw was just, and the opportunities that became available to me were just completely different when I wasn't just like slamming into the brick wall of the organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it all makes sense. How about you, Alex?
Yeah, I would say, like looking at that poll and then thinking about what Melissa and Tacita said, it's like all of the above, right? Like could be like barriers, and what I think the result of those barriers is really like isolation, feeling like you've got to figure it out on your own, feeling like you don't have support, wondering is it me or is it somebody else? Or, I think when you feel isolated and when you don't have a community, when you don't have people who can be your sounding boards, when you don't have people who can give you, like a different perspective, I think that's when it becomes a barrier. And so, for me in my career, I think about, I've been in those places where I've been the only woman in the room, and on top of the only woman, the only Black person. And like, in thinking about early in my career, there was also like an age difference where I was significantly younger than the other men on my team, and I had a really interesting learning opportunity because I got promoted pretty quickly because I would just come in every day and put my head down and just like work, and I started to become like really effective in my role, while sacrificing, I would say, like other parts of myself. And it was kind of in a survival mode, but I ended up being in a position where I was, leading, projects across the organization and having to get buy-in from, older white, cisgendered men on my team, and they didn't like it. And so like that experience in the pushback, in the microaggressions, in the overt aggression that I experienced really, just like kind of was really revealing for me. And I realized that I don't want to be in that situation again. And I actually switched from being a mechanical engineer as I started out my career into software, thinking that there would be more opportunities to be in environments where I'd have more community and more support, which I think is really funny at the time because I think the software's got a long way to go still. But I did end up finding spaces where I had that support, where I had other women around me who were my sounding boards, who built me up. And, like, especially thinking about when I became a mother, having other women who were also moms, who also held that space for you to be kind of like your full self, for you to, it's okay if you come in tired because you've been up all night with this infant who is just refusing to sleep. It's okay, it's okay that we're on a stand-up call and my 3-year-old comes in and is excited because she went potty for the first time, right? Everybody celebrates together on the call, like just holding that space to be kind of your whole self, and advocating for me in a way of like, I had thinking about a company that I started out when I was pregnant. One of the founders of the company was also pregnant, and, just helped me kind of navigate that time together, created in this incredible parental leave policy, that I got to take part of so that I could be supported and I have the time I need to, tend to my new family. And I feel like it's because of those spaces and because of, the women that I had surrounding me in those times that I was able to grow and that I was able to advance in my career. And so I think it's really important to continue to seek out spaces where you have that community. And I feel like, especially if you don't have it within your company, finding it outside of your company, finding it, in the larger tech community where you can just be around, other kind of like-minded people who can be your sounding board, who can help support you, and who can, just help you share the load of that kind of like emotional burden and labor that sometimes happens when you are a woman in this industry or when you are the only woman on the team. So
yeah, that makes sense. I just want to touch on as well, the McKinsey study that talked about, companies faring better with more diverse leadership teams, because obviously our soft skills are typically very different to that of men. Why do you think women make great leaders? Do you want to start with that one, Tacita?
Yeah, actually, I think some of what we were just talking about lends itself well for leadership. Being the only other in the room, you have to build up stamina and resilience to withstand the burden of that role. We often find ourselves having to hold on to that invitation to be in the room. We have to reduce friction. And to reduce friction, you have to read everybody in the room and understand the dynamics that are at play and help with wherever the challenge areas are. And so we are learning to read people. We are learning, we're constantly practicing really strong communication skills. We are trying to reduce friction in the room so people see us as like, oh, we want to have you here. You're helping this thing go better. And all of those skills that are kind of survival for us. We have to, like, when you are the only other room, these are things you're having to practice all day, every day. It's a thing that is exhausting and draining us, but it's also that thing that then translates incredibly well to leadership roles. And so we've gotten a lot of time to practice these skills all day, every day that set us up to be successful leaders that can help people in organizations.
Yeah, love that. Melissa, Alex, do you want to add anything to that before we head over to the third topic?
Just that overcoming adversity builds certain muscles. And the more you've done it, the more it builds those muscles. And in the end, it's a lot of leadership is, hey, here's a hard problem. It needs to be solved. And that's a very similar muscle to, my manager doesn't understand me, or this, I had to just explain to my team why you can't have female strippers at your Xbox launch party and it's inappropriate, right? There's a level of having to have constructive, positive communication and build consensus and alignment to overcome a problem. Even if the problem is weird or trivial, it's still the same muscle that you're going to need as a leader to see a problem in your problem domain and get everybody rallied together to overcome this problem.
Perfect.
I think,
Alex,
one thing I would add too, that I think is a skill that, I've been exploring more, especially as a parent. I think there's only so much time, right? Like time, I don't have the luxury of being able to just pour hours and hours and hours into work or something and really excelling because of how much I'm working. It's like, I've got so many other responsibilities and I've got so many other things that I have to do with my time that I had to learn how to prioritize and maximize my time to say, this is most important. This is what's most impactful. And here's where I need to spend this time right now. And being able to kind of, just filter out and define what's most important, highest impact, right? And where I should focus versus those other things that are nice to have, but maybe aren't as important. That skill, I also think is something that it seems that women have to kind of develop a little bit more just because of the demands of life. And I also think because of the additional, I think just like energy that is required to just like exist in some of these spaces. And I think it's, that's something that can make you really effective, right? And really, just like maximize your work and your effort. So
I love that. Okay, so we're going to go on to our third and final topic before our Q&A. So please remember to put any questions that you've got in the Q&A box. Okay, so the final topic, how can we champion more women? So what avenues have you tried in championing more women? Mentorship, calling out discrimination, attending other women's events, aside from this one, of course, or other, just pop them in the box. So I'll give you a couple of minutes. Okay, so let's have a look at the results. So mentorship comes out over 56%, and then calling out discrimination or attending other women's events. So Helen.
Great. So we have some more positive stats for you now. Deloitte predicts that roughly 1 in 4 leadership positions at large global tech firms are expected to be held by women in 2022. And the shares of women in technical and leadership roles are increasing the most rapidly, which is really good news for women in tech. So how can we ensure these figures go from strength to strength? Tacita, you've mentioned Textio is working on improving the gender bias in performance feedback. For example, women receive 22% more feedback about their personality than men. Can you share a little bit more on this and your thoughts?
Yeah, and what we're doing is we're going to, our software helps sort of up-level the quality of feedback across the board. So we found we did this massive research project and we're unsurprised, but it was also sort of like staggering results of how much bias is in feedback. And some of that, it's in the actual, the written word. The bias is actually there baked into what's been said. Like you said, like there's personality feedback, there's non-actionable feedback. So much of it too is that certain people are getting, certain groups are getting reasonable feedback that's actionable and clear, and many groups are not. And so we're trying to create consistent, equitable access to high quality feedback. You can't do that at scale across large organizations where you've got managers with their own different biases across the whole organization, different skills and experience in writing feedback. And that's such a gatekeeping thing. When some folks are getting that actionable guidance, it's like, here's how to get better at your work. Here's how to increase your impact. That's a clear path to growth. And then there's folks who will be like, it's nice to have you on the team. People think you're nice. Great. So what do I get nicer to get the promotion? Is that what I'm being asked to do here? Like, that's not something I can do. That's my personality and not what I'm bringing to the table. And so trying to ensure that everyone, regardless of who you are and who your manager is, has that access to feedback that can really help promote their career and their growth is so essential and critical. And that's what we're doing. And it's so awesome. I'm so excited about it, but let's save that for another webinar.
Amazing. Well, it sounds like really great stuff that you're doing there. Melissa, in your opinion, what advice would you give to women who are facing biases or men that are witnessing this happening in the office?
To say something, right? The most important thing you can do is see something, say something, speak up. It doesn't have to be confrontational, but if you see somebody taking credit for somebody else's idea, it can be as easy as saying, as Melissa said earlier, and repeat the point. You can call it out in a group, you can call it out privately. If you don't feel comfortable addressing directly and kindly with the individual, talk to their manager, talk to a shared peer. But you have to say something. Saying nothing and doing nothing, right? Silence is compliance, right? You're becoming, whether you mean to or not, you're becoming complicit by saying nothing and doing nothing. When you see somebody being discriminated against, even, being the target of microaggressions, be the change you want to see.
Absolutely, definitely. Alex, obviously the poll came out being mentorship on top. You've experienced the benefits of having a mentor who's championed you in your career. what advice would you give to women or anyone who doesn't yet have a mentor? How can they go about finding someone?
Yeah, I think, yeah, mentorship is a really interesting thing. I think when, sometimes you don't always have the luxury of having someone who can kind of like be in that role. And I think one thing that I've learned, right, like throughout my career, I haven't always had, someone kind of in a mentorship capacity or who has kind of like championed me from that perspective. And I think you can learn something from everyone. That's the first thing that I would say is that, you can look at someone who does one thing really well and you can learn from that person. You can talk to them about how they got to do that thing well, or like what they think about, or, how they, just how they do it. And that you can take away from them. I think mentorship is, sometimes I think we have some like expectations about like what a mentor is, and what role that person should have in your life. And I think, one of the things that I think about, there's some guidelines around like mentorship, right? And mentorship, I think a good mentor is like a good teacher. So it's like someone who understands that everyone is unique and everyone's path is unique, and that their path might not be exactly the same as someone else's, right? Or like your path doesn't need to be exactly the same as their path. Someone who can be a sounding board for you, someone who will tell you the truth and give you honest feedback, but also someone who can just ask really good questions to get you to think, and to get you to, explore kind of on your own, and values your voice and your opinions and your feelings about how you should go. Someone who can just help you kind of navigate those things without dictating what you should do. And then the other thing I think about is like mentors are just people. And so sometimes they get it wrong. And so I think it's, you don't have to take everything that you get from a mentor, right? You can take what is really helpful, and then you can leave some other things. I've had some women in my life who were well-intentioned, who wanted to mentor me. And they gave me some really just like not advice that just didn't sit well with me. And that was one of those things where I had to be like, you know what? I have to really think about what I want, what I need. And like, that's not aligned with where I'm at right now. And so recognizing that like you need to have, kind of the power and the, just like you're in control of how you decide to move, and what you kind of take and receive from that relationship. And so those are things like to keep in mind. And I think with that said, it kind of opens up mentorship to look different, right? Outside of maybe like the kind of formal like mentor role that we think about. And so, I will say there are times where I've developed special, I would say like really wonderful relationships with women who have had more experience and who have been able to really just kind of like guide me through a period of time, right? Like I feel like it's been one of those things that kind of like come and go. And that's been wonderful. And when I have those times and when I have those relationships and they've been more organic, right? I really value those and I'm really appreciative. And one of the things I always like to say is like, when someone, puts in the extra time or is like willing to spend time with you, be appreciative and grateful for that time, and don't be entitled because they don't have to do it. And, like it's not their job. Right. And so just like always be grateful. And kind. And so that's something I'd like to just tell people, because I think sometimes people feel entitled of like, oh, well, they should be spending time with me, or they should be coaching me through this, or they should, be sacrificing all these things. And it's like, no, they shouldn't. So those are my rambling thoughts about mentorship. But I hope that
all very valid. All very valid.
Yeah, exactly.
No, love that. Okay, we're going to head over to Q&A now. So if you can all put any questions that you have, guys, in the Q&A box at the bottom. But while those are coming in, I've got a question for all three of you. Can you each give your suggestion on the number one thing women can do to advance their journey to leadership? What's your number one piece of advice that you give?
I'll start.
Yeah.
So the number one piece of advice I can give is to be clear and direct about what your aspirations are, right? You want to be in leadership. What does leadership mean to you? Why do you want it? And then be really clear with your manager that what you mean by leadership is what your manager means by leadership. Just because you want to increase scope and impact and, you know, have power doesn't necessarily mean you want to be a manager. Maybe it means you want to be a technical leader, and what are the tracks available to you. But understanding what that means, what it means to be a leader, starts with being really clear first with yourself, and then being explicitly clear with what you want with the person who's able to give it to you.
Mm-hmm. Great. Clarity is always good. How about you, Tacita?
That and take it easy on yourself. I think I see, I hear folks, and I myself have found my moments in time where they're just like, my self-talk is not doing me any favors. And so just really look out for those moments where like, are you giving yourself enough credit here? Are you giving yourself, are you supporting your own self sort of with the internal dialogue? Mm-hmm. So in addition to being really clear with everyone, like what it is that you're going for, so you get that support along the way, just be really clear with yourself about what you're expecting of yourself. And is that realistic? Is it okay? And if that voice is getting harsh, go and turn to some other folks to help you recalibrate and get to a place where you're your own advocate too internally.
Brilliant. And Alex?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think just to reiterate I was going to kind of talk about like, do you have to ask for what you want? Like, I think that's a really important thing. And I think, Melissa, you kind of already touched on that as well. But I would say the other thing that comes to mind is really taking the time to really think about what's most important to you. What are your values? Really, like exploring that question of like, who are you? Right? Like, it's such I think a hard and big question, but I think we spend so much of our time, like at work. We spend so much of our time thinking about, the specific, work and like role that we have within organizations. And I've learned that it's really important for that to align with really like what's most important to you, especially as you move into leadership roles. And I would say that like having a clear understanding of your values, and then as much as possible, like trying to align the work that you're doing with those values, right? So if your value, for me, my value is really just like working with people, working with teams, like seeing helping to like unlock, right, like potential in folks, helping them to be the best that they can be. That's what really excites me and what drives me. And so I feel like I seek for roles where I can do that. I want to be doing that in my work. And I want to be doing that in other parts of my life and other relationships, right? And I think when I have that alignment, my engagement and my enjoyment is so much higher. And then when challenges come up, I'm more able to easily see the opportunities in those challenges because I know I'm working towards something that's really important to me. And so I think if you can kind of have those things align, that feels like, a way to really ensure that you're able to continue to grow, and that you'll enjoy it and you'll continue to progress. So
thank you.
We have a question come in. As Tacita mentioned, it can be quite exhausting. How do you manage this pressure and avoid burnout? Does anyone want to take that one?
I can take it. I think that's something that I often, that I it's something, a balance that I'm often having to work to find. For one thing, I would say, like, for me, it takes a lot of self-control. And recognizing that in order for me to continue to like work and continue to be able to like show up and perform at a high level, I have to like take care of other parts of myself. So whether that's like health-wise, whether that's like having a mental break, exploring other, you know, areas of life that I really enjoy, like I have to find that balance. Otherwise, I find myself headed toward burnout. And so I've learned to see kind of the alarms that go off for me when I know that I'm getting off balance. And that for me is like, you know, I might get depressed, or I might, you know, just be a little bit too upset about like this conversation or this change, you know, that's coming, that's like different than what I was anticipating. Or I might be like a little bit snappy with my children, or, you know, like there's like all these flags for me that like, oh, I'm getting off balance and I need to make sure that I'm, you know, that I stop work today at 5, that I go and I, you know, take a long walk with my dog, that I'm making sure that I'm exercising, or that I'm eating well, or that I'm getting better sleep. Like those are all the things I think that go into helping combat burnout for me, just from like a personal perspective. I'd be interested to hear too, maybe if Tacita or Melissa has more of a systemic, maybe like perspective on like burnout and how, you know, like if there's like a relentless stream of work, like how you can kind of combat it from that perspective. But
yeah,
I'll stop there.
So the most important thing I can say to that is you don't have to fight every fight, right? If you need permission from externally, you have my permission. You don't have to fight every fight, right? If you are pregnant and you're experiencing pregnancy discrimination at work, you absolutely could drive it all the way to the top, drive a lawsuit, try to affect change. But also you can just quit, right? You don't have to fight the fight. It's good to fight the fight. There's nothing wrong with fighting. But if you fight every fight, right, if you try to take everything to a happy conclusion, you're going to burn yourself to pieces. There'll be nothing left. So pick your battles, right? If you don't have the energy to fight the battle, it's okay, right? Another one will come. You don't spread yourself too thin.
Sort of related to that too, you can set up a framework for yourself of what things you want to be, what are the fights that you want to take on, and think of that proactively ahead of time. So like you can start your week out and be like, these are the 2 things that I need to be focused on the most, and those might be like work related outcomes, and here's the one thing that I know is like right now getting in the way of my experience here. Maybe that's like, I'm getting talked over a lot. I'm not, you know, whatever that thing is. If there's some pattern to the fights that are the things that are hurting you, you can identify those things ahead of time. And so anything that like, if you actually like write that, like whether it's sticky notes in the bottom of your screen or something, but like the 1 to 3 things to keep your energy focused on, it makes it easier if you've been really explicit with yourself up front about that, to then like let the other stuff go. And because you can't take it all on, whether it's fights or work or whatever the thing is, like what is the most important thing for me to apply my energy to this week, and try really hard to stick to that.
Exactly.
Okay, another question. Okay, so despite promising to diversify the team, the overwhelming majority of candidates being interviewed are cis men. It's exhausting facilitating these interviews as the only female on the team. What are fair expectations to set for the candidate funnel?
I can give you a really easy one, which is what I tell my sourcers: not extending an offer to any candidate unless I have interviewed somebody who is diverse to my team. And, you know, diverse will differ from one team to the next, right? If I have not if they can't find one person that I can put through the loop, I don't have to hire them. If I can't even interview one person who meets my diverse set, I won't make an offer. I'm not going to do it. And that has always resulted in high quality qualified candidates who are diverse. And it's also removed the sourcers who role play ball, right? If they're not willing to do the barest of bare minimums to put diverse candidates in my pipe, then you know, there's better teams I can work with, right, Helen? We were very happy to put diverse candidates in my pipe.
Absolutely. Anyone else want to answer that one or move on to the next question? Okay. So next question, my company's headcount is male dominant across most, if not all functions. So what conversations can I have with the few women we have to ensure they feel supported and are on a level playing field with their male counterparts? Tacita?
It's the question of like, what conversations can I have? I think starting to just share your experiences, that alone can be really helpful. So you can see like, okay, are you facing the same things? Because from where you're standing to what I'm seeing, and are there one, it's helpful just to have that sounding board and some sort of support, and like, okay, I'm not alone here. But the other is if you come up with patterns and stories that you might want to bring to your people team at the organization, whoever is there, or your managers, to try and start seeing if there's things that you need to change. I mean, number one is you need more representation. So the fact that there's a small group there, you can have that conversation, like, how do we bring this story and how important it is for us to change the fact that there's only a handful of us here. But yeah, looking for those other patterns. So just starting to share stories, I think, can be really helpful. And you just build up trust and support from the few people who are there. But it's a really tough one as far as like what conversations are actually going. If the goal is to change the situation, or is the goal to just get support and not feel alone, and sort of figuring out what you want to get out of those connections and drive the conversation topics from there. I don't know if that's helpful, but
yeah. Well, thank you. I think that's all we have time for, unfortunately. It's been really great having you all. So thank you so much to Melissa, Tacita, and Alex for being with us today. As I mentioned before, we'll be sending around a link to the video and also a feedback survey. So please feel free to give us your insight into how you found today. And also, if you have any other questions, I'm sure these guys will be happy for you to connect with them on LinkedIn. And if this has inspired you and you want to look for a new role, please feel free to connect with me as well. So thank you, everyone. And enjoy the rest of your day.